Oh, I've got some music for when I come in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Never Explain. My name's Steve Cross. I'm your host for the naughtiest science-themed comedy panel game show comedy show anywhere inside my studio. I'm joined by two incredible teams today, and by the absolutely perfect Jones the Maths, the very much the Carol Vorderman of the Valleys. I should have just said the Vorderman of the Valleys. Now I think about it, the Riley of the really shit bits of Wales. We're going to be playing a game of give the best answers to the science comedy questions, and I'll be scoring it. But just before I score it, let's fly over to Wales and meet Jones the Maths. Jones, how are you?
I'm fine. My big question isn't Carol Vorderman the Vorderman of the Valleys?
No idea. I assumed that she came out of a vat somewhere.
I think she did, but in, like Caerphilly or something. So. Yeah.
Have you watched the My World Kitchen with Glamorgan sausages yet? I thoroughly recommend it.
Oh, wait, I watched it around your house, I think.
Yes. Just because Ainsley Harriott always pronounces carefully. So they made a recipe with carefully, and just to hear him going, crumble the carefully. Good, right, that was that. Thank you, Sarah. So the rules of the game are as follows. I'm going to ask our two teams questions. Our two teams are going to give answers, and whenever they say something that makes me laugh or would make me laugh, if we weren't in the middle of a COVID semi-lockdown with an incoherent government and twins, you'll hear this noise. And that means they've got a point. Any other noises just mean I'm dicking about with this sound box that I've got. Good. So I'm going to first of all turn to our amazing teams to introduce themselves. And just a reminder, these teams are playing for permanent glory. I have a league table that we're building up. You can go and have a look on scienceshowoff.org for that. And it records the scores in every single game, who's played how many games, and it is a league table. So these guys are playing for the greater glory of themselves and their organization. So I'm going to start off with Team UCL. Elisa, do you want to tell everybody who you are and what your science and comedy credentials are?
Hi, everyone. I'm Elisa. I'm a PhD student in neuroscience at UCL. I've done quite a lot of science communication and a bit of science comedy. So I started doing it about 1.5 years ago. And
amazing, brilliant. Big round of applause for Elisa, please. Those of you who don't know UCL, it's the university where last month the Vice-Chancellor, they call it a provost, wrote an article about how they were going to clamp down on sexual harassment, which I think is an article that gets written every 2 years by somebody at UCL. And also on Team UCL, Noemi, do you want to say hello to everybody and tell them who you are?
Hi, everyone. So I'm a PhD student at UCL in computer science. And my research topic is on MRI brain scans, but my main focus is on coming up with different ways of hiding from my third supervisor, who's a bit, overzealous, to say the least. And this supervisor has also incidentally inspired my stand-up comedy career, which has, not been that long, but here I am, and hopefully it will be fun.
I think one of you might just have killed their mic. Something went, so let's just double check quickly. So a big round of applause for Noemi from Team UCL there. Let's move over to Team QMUL alumni and their captain, the veteran of numerous Never Explains, the only person ever to be booed live in a non-ironic way during one of these games. Hannah, who are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm a PhD person, so I did one in the link between diabetes and bowel cancer, but then got out of academia and now just get shit done in various startups. And my comedy credentials, I guess 1 year ago I was doing Science Show Off Fun at the Edinburgh Fringe, but alas, that is no more. But yeah, big fan of Science Show Off Fun.
I mean, at least we're not having to spend all the money we spend on going to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's fun, but I'd rather just have the grand, you know. Brilliant. And joining Hannah, Zoe, do you want to tell everyone who you are?
Yes, I am an English PhD student who is definitely not a scientist, pretending to be a scientist for the purposes of today. I look at sexual consent in the 18th century and read far too many books unless I'm hiding from my thesis, because I'm also not an alumni thanks to COVID.
Oh, well, in our hearts you are.
I am professional masquerader today, I think.
Well, and I'm a fellow of Queen Mary, so there's a good chance I could just give you your degree. I'm not sure what the rules are, but
do it now. Do it now.
The ceremony, I stood at the front of graduation, and somebody said how brilliant I was for 5 minutes while I did faces like this. Not realizing that there was a camera pointing at my face, projecting my face 30 foot high behind me. And then there were 2 bottles of champagne, but I was there with my other half, who was pregnant with twins, and my mum, who doesn't drink. So I drank 2 bottles of champagne to celebrate my own success. And that was great. Well, maybe. Sarah, can we have a point off QMUL alumni early for Zoe pretending to be a scientist? It's better to not be a scientist for these questions, as you'll know, having seen them. And the reason it's called Never Explain is if people start doing any long, boring science, I cut them off and they lose points. So no need to pretend to be a scientist, and a point off for even trying. My big -1. Let's go to Sarah Jones and get the scores before the first round. No. Right, so let's move on. We're going to go straight into round 1. And in round 1, the question is, who was the cleverest person ever to live and why? And I'm going straight to the most veteran player, Hannah Thompson. Hannah.
All right. So I think the Queen is the cleverest person to live ever. Despite
another point off Queen Mary. Thank you.
Despite there being no real need for her role whatsoever, apart from to house sit some decadent mansions like the world's most deluxe property guardian, she still manages to retain her well-paid and necessary job during a pandemic. It seems her job description is just to wear fancy jewelled items, coloured coats, have small inoffensive dogs, and babysit Prince Philip. Perhaps it's fair to be classed as a key worker for looking after Prince Philip. She's also super clever because she's not retired yet, even at age 94. I mean, why would you retire if you knew that an old white man was going to take over your position? So that's it. I think the Queen, regardless of her.
Amazing. Big round of applause for Hannah Thompson, please. I filled in a mortgage application form today, and one of the questions was, when do you plan to retire? And I wrote 70. And underneath they wrote, the age you've written for retirement is later than the standard. Can you explain why? And I just wanted to write, have you ever read the news? There's no way anyone's going to retire at 65. What are you talking about? Amazing. Right, let's jump on over to UCL. Elisa, tell me, who's the cleverest person to ever live and why?
So that's obviously Boris Johnson, because he's like...
That's a point off UCL this time, Sarah. Thanks.
I'm getting there. He's like Leonardo da Vinci. He's a polymath. So a polymath is someone whose knowledge spans a significant number of subjects, known to draw on complex bodies of knowledge to solve specific problems. So I think if there's one thing that the last few months have shown to us, is that this definition perfectly fits Boris Johnson. A politician, right? So he's very skilled in the art of public speaking, which is why he said inspiring things like, and I quote, "Many more families are going to lose loved ones before their time," which I think is an amazing thing to say. He's also demonstrated his in-depth knowledge in immunology and public health when he said, "I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody," which I think is incredible. And then finally, I think of how clever he is the latest scapegoating trick that the UK government has pulled. A YouGov survey of like 2,500 Brits showed that should there be a second wave of coronavirus, 52% would hold the public responsible for it, and only 31% would blame the government. And I think that is why Boris Johnson is the cleverest person ever to live.
Thanks. I hope you're noticing I've been practicing facial reactions based on the interview that Donald Trump did with whatever they're called, Alvios. I think this is a channel previously known as Air Miles. So I'm trying to do those. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for Elisa. Now we're going to move over to the QMUL alumni and proto-alumni. Alumuand. That's it, like a graduand. Zoe, tell us, who was the cleverest person ever to live and why?
I thought this was going to be tricky until I realised I have actually met the cleverest person ever to live. And I actually meet them in quite a lot of places. I see them pretty much any time I get in a taxi or at a party or at a conference, because the cleverest person ever to live is the guy telling me why my thesis is a load of crap. Right, first off, like, I see him everywhere and he always looks different. So he's mastered shape-shifting and time travel. So that's pretty impressive. He also always knows where I'm going to be, which is some pro-stalker techniques there. Not that I'm advocating for that, but it is a skill. And I don't even know where I'm going half of the time. So it is actually really quite impressive. And finally, it doesn't matter kind of how much work I do or how much research or kind of logic. He will always be right. And someone who can never be wrong must be the smartest person ever to live.
Yes, it's just obvious. Big round of applause for Zoe, please. Great first answer from first-time player. That was wonderful. Excellent. And if you are any of those men, let us know in the YouTube comments. We'd love to find out more about you. And I'd just like to say, when Zoe said pro-stalker there, she meant as in a professional stalker, not like she's pro-stalker. So any of you who were thinking, oh, she wants stalking. No, she
Please do not.
Nobody does. Amazing, right? It's not flattering. Let's fly over to UCL. Noemi, who's the cleverest person to ever live and why?
So I actually picked someone who's no longer alive. I picked a man called Wolfgang von Kempelen.
Yes, this is how people are supposed to answer this question.
Who in the 18th century claimed to have built a chess-playing robot called the Turk. Now, this robot was a life-size doll dressed in Turkish garb, because apparently Kempelen was a racist. And this doll was sat in front of a desk with a chessboard, and it essentially toured Europe for about 80 years, pretending to play chess with people like Napoleon and Benjamin Franklin. And it would typically win these games, so it was really a big sensation. And of course, eventually it turned out to be a hoax. And actually, the desk had a hidden compartment where a human would play chess under the table. But the reason why I think Kempelen was really, really smart for doing this is because somehow, already in the 18th century, he managed to convince a very, very smart chess-playing champion to spend hours in a small, dark space performing brain-intensive tasks with no acknowledgement of what he was doing. And essentially, I think this man basically invented academia with this move. The other reason why I really like this story is because when you tell the story today, the idea of a chess-playing robot is really not that exciting. There's a lot of AI around, so actually people are more shocked at how did you fit that person into that desk? And also I really like imagining that if modern AI would work like this as well, we just have server rooms full of people hiding in small compartments doing really, really difficult tasks. And then it just makes me think of Alexa being even creepier than before. So that's my answer.
Amazing. Big round of applause for Noemi. Can I do a follow-up question? Was the person inside the box Turkish?
No, and
that would have explained a lot.
It was many people because it was going on for over 80 years.
Wow, it's like the chess playing Stig of the olden days. That's just a Top Gear joke for people.
Yeah.
I've been playing a car game on my Xbox a lot. It's very funny. Right, brilliant, good. That's the end of round one. Big round of applause for all of our players at the end of round one. None of you are looking at me like Steve's missed us out. Brilliant. So let's jump on an EasyJet over to Newport Airport, and we'll find out from Jones how the scores are going. Jones.
Well, in an interesting turn of events, we've got Queen Mary coming in with 18 points.
That's pretty good when they got 2 off before they even started.
But quite a heavy lead for UCL at the moment with Die Tree.
Oh! Just a reminder for all of you that Sarah only knows the Welsh for odd numbers. Amazing. Right. So teams, we're going to move on into round 2 now. Now in round 2, your job is to dive in whenever you've got a funny one to say, but this is Zoom, so it's slightly awkward. So you have to give each other a tiny beat to jump in, but don't kind of give each other 10 seconds because that leads to dead air, at which point I will start talking because I'll assume something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. So this round is the Great Lists of Science. I'm going to give you the title of effectively a PowerPoint slide, and I want you to tell me the bullet points that will be on this PowerPoint slide. So I know that you are all recent university people or current university people. So let's start with topic 1. Unexpected things to find in the university's PhD student prospectus.
The supervisors on this program do not have a history of sexual harassment.
I'd like to find a way to explain what a PhD is to your family.
I mean, it's easy. It's a philosophy of doctor. That's why it's a PhD.
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
Resources to mental health charities, because no one in academia cares about that.
We really support the arts, and this year we're going to fund them too.
My
PhD student suicide rate second lowest in the country.
What's the lowest? Probably Brighton.
I think
Apparently people in Brighton are happier than anywhere else. The man who did that research lived in London and moved to Brighton at the end of his PhD because literally his results were that strong. He was like, I'm just going to Brighton. Keep them coming.
We're committed enough to equal opportunities that we've formed a committee to tell us we don't need to make any changes.
Keep going.
a PhD is the only reason to live.
Intravenous caffeine injections available.
Academia, the job you pay to do.
Oh dear, it's fun doing freelancing for universities because sometimes they're like, well, there's no fee for this. I'm like, I'm not falling for that one again. Right, let's move on to our second list, friends. Tell me, how can you tell when someone is really in love with you?
I asked my boyfriend, but he said he didn't know.
Yeah, I think you can.
Hold on, quick fire.
He is watching, so he's really suffering for it.
You know,
This is for him. Go on. And this stabbing noise.
gosh.
Right, back to, how can you tell when someone is really in love with you?
So you know someone's in love with you in COVID times when they come within 2 meters of you. So that means everyone in Sainsbury's, Hobbycraft and TK Maxx is in love with me. And yes, those are obviously my 3 favourite shops.
Point off for Hannah for going to Hobbycraft.
I was gonna raise you for they kissed you during a pandemic.
Yeah. And to be honest,
So
in
they
all
try and
honesty,
kill you? Amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
if you die, then I die. You know, we die together. I suppose that's the main
Just
idea.
to clarify for anyone listening, the you in the Noemi story is not me. Yeah.
So I think my parents are really in love with me because they still make me flapjack and crumble when I go home. But they still get mad at me for getting mud on the doormat, despite that being its sole purpose. So maybe they don't really love me.
I
Doormats around your way.
I think it's the people who first off let you talk about your thesis to them, because anyone put up with that is a star. But then it's also the people who, when you then complain about your thesis, don't remind you that you chose this life.
And then they willingly read a draft version of your PhD thesis.
No, that's too much. No, no, no,
No, but they do read it.
no. Why would you inflict that on anyone? Is this like the ultimate test? If you really love me, saw your own finger off or read my thesis. And they're like, let me get the knife. And that's not a comment on your thesis. It's a comment on all theses, which could be summarized in 10 words. Like, here we go. Let's do this one. Dr. Hannah Thompson, is there a link between diabetes and bowel cancer?
Yes.
There you go. You see, done. Like, that's the thesis. There's a little asterisk which says read more if you can be asked. Right, let's any more for this one. How can you tell when someone's really in love with you?
I think when they send you a paper and they say, I saw this and thought of you, I think that's when they're in love with you.
That would be my supervisor, and that's just not true.
No points for that one, jeepers. I mean, I know we mentioned stalking earlier, but let's not.
If you shed enough hair to recarpet the flat, they don't complain at you.
Solid.
They volunteer for your 2-hour MRI scan more than once.
Zoe, do you think we're doing like relationship counselling today? So I'm really, and why is he not on in that instance? Incredible, incredible. I mean, presumably he's got a nice job. He sells rope on Etsy made from the stuff he hoovers up. Oh, that's
Terrifying.
right. Let's move on to our third topic. It's all gone a bit PhD, but this is going to make it worse. But don't worry, we'll dig it back, listeners, if you're like, this has got too PhD. But we'll do this one. Unuseful comments on your thesis draft. And just before you start answering this one, this question is in honor of my friend Gemma, who, when she handed in a draft of her thesis, her supervisor circled an entire page and wrote, "Make this better." Good. Tell me, unuseful comments on a thesis draft.
I genuinely have a friend whose supervisor ruled a line under part of their work and wrote, "I'm going on a suicide break." That was not a helpful comment.
I think another unhelpful comment would be something nice like, "I like the way you've used the punctuation there," because it really makes you question if your supervisor is okay, because you're sort of fearing for your life that when they're going to come back and snap back and be like, "I just hate all semicolons." So
For me, a real example is, your introduction is too long and you should add an additional section citing my very relevant works.
of course.
That was my actual feedback in my Viva. The external was like, write in my mate's bullshit theory, which was disproved, I think, 3 months after he made me write it in.
But also make it shorter.
Oh, yeah. Any more unuseful comments on a thesis draft?
I was going to make a passive-aggressive comment, but it's not worth it.
You are overthinking things.
Fortunately, reviewer 2 will never read this.
Just a quick fact for all the scientists, reviewer 3 is always me. I don't read them. I've just got preset comments that I send, which I get out of just Viz books of insults.
There is nothing that can be improved on here.
Please add a sentence here.
Add that reference that we discussed in 2013.
Amazing. Right. Big round of applause for all of our players, please. Oh, I should have put the backhanded compliments one in. That was a good round, but it was nothing compared to the teams actually cutting bits of each other off and me having to edit it down like we got last week. Well done, teams. Well done. So let's move over to Jones's scores. Jones. Sorry, Jones is just starting up the Welsh internet. It's a bit slow.
I mean,
got it for the day.
That is actually genuinely true. I have to do this right next to the modem for it to be streamable. And you're lucky it has stopped raining, because that does interfere with the internet connection. So UCL are currently on Treating Scythe.
Ooh.
But some might call it an incredible comeback from Queen Mary with Pedwardig Pimp.
Yeah.
Yay! We got a number ending in 5, so Sarah has to say pimp. That's the main reason I pressed the bell. I don't count them. I'm glad somebody does. Brilliant. Excellent work, teams. Let's move straight on to round 3. It's a Never Explained classic. Always a favourite of mine. Teams, God has given you the chance to delete any one scientific law from existence. And that's not just like the written down thing, it's the effect of it. Which one are you going for? And I'm going to fly over to Noemi first. Noemi, tell me, which scientific law are you going to delete from existence?
So for me, this was a really obvious answer. I would delete the second law of thermodynamics,
Classic.
which essentially says that disorder in the universe as a whole will always increase or stay the same. And essentially, in lay terms, what that means is that it's the primary reason why we can't have an undo button in real life. So because if we went back in time, the disorder that happened in that time that has passed would be undone, and the second law of thermodynamics is not having it. But I think having an undo button in real life would be really useful, and really there would be unlimited possibilities. You could undo wars, you could undo the COVID pandemic, and you could undo me pressing reply all on that email while I'm calling my supervisor petty and pedantic. But unfortunately, these all violate the second law of thermodynamics. I would also like to add as an aside that calling someone out on being petty and pedantic only makes them even more petty and pedantic.
Applause for Noemi, please. Yeah, no, it's so weird, the whole no undo thing, because when you're used to using like computer software in real life, everything is just accidents that froze and got stuck. I'll give you an example. So lots of you know I've got twin babies. The pregnancy test we used that proved that my partner was pregnant, they later recalled them all for false positives. So it turns out my children are just a false positive pregnancy result that got massively, massively, massively out of hand. I did suggest this to the anaesthetist during their delivery by C-section. Apparently, if you keep doing jokes like that, we won't let you stay in the operating theatre. Amazing. Right. Thank you so much, Noemi. Let's fly over to Zoe. Zoe, tell me, God's given you the chance to delete any one scientific law from existence. Which one are you going for?
Cause and effect. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people are terrible. So, you know, we have climate crisis, we have COVID, we have all this stuff. And there are some very obvious things that we could do to stop these problems happening, and we're not doing them. So if we got rid of cause and effect, then that would stop things like people's continued socializing or burning of fuels from actually having those negative effects. So I think that would be a good one. And what I would do is I would replace it with Terry Pratchett's law of narrative causality, which basically says that the plot demands of a story will happen, because that would actually give us some chance of like turning things around and saving things. And also maybe things that people did would actually make sense.
Amazing. Big round of applause for Zoe, please. I mean, Zoe, the secret to what you're talking about is to play a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, but be the character who's on all of the merchandise and is therefore unkillable, has plot armor. So those of you coming to Chaotic Adequate next week will know what I mean. Like, you can't hurt or kill my character, because then we would have to bin all the stickers, all the t-shirts, all the bags. Yeah, I have ultimate plot armor. Amazing. Well done. I once, a comedian, Beck Hill, did a show. And when one of the things she did was ask the audience, if you could have any superpower, what power would it be? And I said, the power for my actions not to have consequences. And she just went, oh, you want to be a psychopath? Perfect response. Right, let's fly over to UCL again, to Elisa. Elisa, hello. You haven't done this one yet, have you? Tell me. God's given you the chance to delete a scientific law. Which one are you going for?
I would delete Newton's first law of motion, which is the law of inertia. And the reason for that is, so basically this law states that a body will continue in its straight state of rest or uniform motion unless something changes that. And that is the most accurate description of my PhD. So essentially, it started in 2017 and it hasn't really gone anywhere. It hasn't made any progress. And I think for that is exactly because of Newton's first law of motion. So my PhD continued in a state of rest because the forces propelling it forward, so my hard work and determination, in strength by the ones pushing it backwards. So, you know, failed experiments and just Mother Nature's ill will or something like that. So I think PhD will remain where it is, so unfinished, until something changes dramatically or the universe collapses, whatever happens first. So if you get rid of it, maybe I'll have a chance to finally finish it, and that's why I would go for that one.
Amazing round of applause for Elisa, please. I do remember during my PhD trying to make friends with physicists who would tell me that the universe was about to end, so I didn't have to write the fucking thing up. I mean, there we go. No consequences to your actions. Perfect. Now let's fly back to Queen Mary. Hannah Thompson, with the, I want to say the world at your feet, but it's technically behind your head. Tell me, if you could delete any one scientific law from existence, what would you go for?
Well, because I'm too far away from my PhD to know about any science anymore, and I don't really like laws, I actually chose the same one as Elisa, which was tragic now looking at it. But I said we should just do away with the first law of motion, because we're not allowed anywhere anyway. We're not moving anywhere. So what the hell? Just get rid of it. Stop the pandemic by stopping the first law of motion, right? And that would also stop cyclists just sneaking past you too close. It would also mean there'd be no bird shit falling on your head. Is this correct? Have I got the law right? I'm not really sure.
Bird shit would stay attached to the bird's cloaca as the bird flew along.
But would it be flying if there was no law of motion? I don't know. I thought that if there was no more law
It'd be
of
flying,
motion,
but it would have to have been born flying, and it would keep
exactly
a uniform speed.
So everything would just be really dead still, and we only communicate through telepathy, which I think is, the future.
I mean, I like this. I'm not sure about the anti-cyclist dig in the middle. I think we should take a point off for that one, Sarah. I mean, I know that Hannah is a great big 4x4 driver, bombing around the country roads on the state where she lives, just mowing down farmers and their children and peasants and pheasants, as she calls it. But you can't have cyclists. They try their best,
I know.
I ride a bike, and I would say if you want to ride a bike and get every motorist to treat you like God, is have a trailer on the back with twin babies in it. Jesus, I get buses let me pull out, taxis let me pull out. A bus literally stopped. It was going along. It had right of way. It still stopped and let me out, because it's like, your problem's bigger than ours, mate. The one bike you cannot crush. And sometimes we go out and I'll be pulling the thing and my partner will be behind me, and you'll get motorists coming up going like, you're too far out, you're too far out. And then they noticed that she was out wide because she was protecting the outer edge of the trailer full of babies. And they're like, sorry, love, sorry, love, sorry, love, sorry, love. Brilliant, brilliant. The only good use of babies. Fantastic. Right. Another point for my children there. Let's fly over to Wales. I mean, you could tunnel over to Wales. Welsh people very good at the whole underground thing. Very much the Viet Cong of the British Isles. Sarah Jones, tell me, how are the scores going? That was a strange analogy, Steve. It was. But I did watch Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now back to back, because there's very little freelance work around at the moment, and I've got to fill my days somehow. Sarah, how are the scores?
Well, UCL still trailing behind on Pimp Dig 8.
Yeah, Pimp Tig, yeah. It's a very UCL number.
And Queen Mary storming ahead with Quick Dig 4.
I know, it's wonderful. I mean, UCL used to pay me, but then they stopped. Whereas Queen Mary gave me a fellowship and I've still got it. So it's unsurprising, the extremely biased marking that we're getting. So let's move on to round 4. Regular Never Explained viewers will know that round 4 is when Steve has run out of normal things to ask. So he just refers to childhood games. We've had Shag, Marry, Kill. We have had Who Would Win in a Fight Between, which means the obvious one to do this time round is Would You Rather, and why? So let's start with Zoe. So Zoe, you're a great humanities scholar, so I've given you one of the great humanities questions. There is a trolley speeding along 2 railway lines. You're standing next to a lever. Would you rather pull the lever and kill 1 person, or stay away from the lever and let 5 people die?
So this is sometimes called the trolley problem, which is kind of a misnomer, because if you think about it, this is really the trolley opportunity. I think if you think about the state of the world right now, like in this problem, somebody is going to die. So I'm going to be responsible for death, whatever. So what I have to do is do absolutely nothing and allow 5 people who we could all do without to mysteriously vanish from the world. Now, I think not only is this a perfect opportunity to get rid of some truly terrible people, but I think you could turn this into a fundraising exercise, like a raffle tickets, nominate the person you think should be one of the 5. We could raise a ton of money for the NHS or something similar, or something that's been, defunded horrendously. And in one fell swoop, we could take out some of the people kind of making everything abysmal. This isn't really a problem. This is just me doing nothing and the world getting better.
Amazing. Round of applause for Zoe. Sarah, can we take a point off Zoe for heading into eugenics territory with the "we'll kill 5 people for the NHS," where she's strapped 5 people with long-term conditions to the
didn't
rails.
say that.
It was in there underneath. I thought there was a hint, a little hint.
I was going more for the kind of Trumps of the world, but sure, if you want to make it eugenics.
Well, also, I'd like to encourage all of you to read more about the trolley problem. There is a wonderful Facebook page called Trolley Problem Memes, where people put trolley problems for the 21st century up. I love it. I love it to the extent that they always use the same crudely drawn clip art, and I've made myself a T-shirt with just the person who has to pull the lever on the T-shirt with a very big brown, very sad. I love trolley problem memes. Excellent answer, Zoe. Excellent. By the way, never ask a lawyer this question. Should I pull the lever? Well, there's 5 lies there. They just go, if you pull the lever, it's murder. You can bring up the rest in mitigation with the judge, but it's murder. Who should we go to next? Noemi, would you rather be automatically given your PhD now with no more work, or £40,000 cash that you're never allowed to complete a PhD?
So I really like this question for multiple reasons. Firstly, it kind of goes to show how little Steve values PhDs. Because, I mean, ultimately £40,000 isn't that much money. I could have just...
Sarah, point off Noemi for thinking £40,000 is not much money.
I could have just not lived in London for 4 years and saved that much money. I could have gone and lived in Wales and paid £300 for rent instead of £1,300 per rent. Or spend £170 on the tube, which is basically just an extremely socially anxiety-inducing experience that made me need therapy, which incidentally is also more expensive than £40,000 if you stretch it out over a 4-year PhD duration. The other kind of thing that I really wanted to unpick about this question is that Steve specified that it's £40,000 of cash. And that's going to be very, very much paper money, I assume. And I don't know where I would put it because, unfortunately, my £1,300 rent doesn't afford me a large enough space to actually put that much cash. So I really don't know what to do with it. And also, I mean, it would come across really suspicious. And most places, especially in the pandemic, just don't really accept cash anymore. So I just have to be tugging it into random places, hoping that people don't think I got it in some really ominous way, like not finishing a PhD. But then I also thought about it like, okay, well, I don't really have space, but also we're going through this COVID pandemic. And a second wave is likely coming up. And, one of the things that happened at the first wave, I think might happen again, which was that people were stockpiling toilet paper. So, it's going to essentially come to that point where toilet paper might become so valuable and so expensive that starting to spend some of that money just directly, skipping the toilet paper purchases might actually pay off. So, in conclusion, I would probably finish my PhD rather than get £40,000 because if I go the other way, I'd have to accept the sad reality that essentially I just want to undo the last 3 and a bit years of my life, pretend that it never happened, and I have enough money for a deposit, not in London, but somewhere else.
Round of applause to Noemi, please. That was a wonderful answer. So the reason I put £40,000 cash is I thought it'd be easier to hide from Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs because I didn't want the answer to start well. If it counted as a capital gain, of course, I'd lose 19% of the £40,000 cash. But if it counted as income, I'd lose
So I'm a PhD student, and the only perk of being a PhD student is that I don't have to pay taxes.
I mean, you do if you earn money, but you don't earn
But
money.
I don't, so
Right,
problem
yeah.
solved.
And I've met PhD students who are like, I do a PhD, I don't have to pay tax. So on the side, I'm earning 20 grand. I'm like, you need to pay some tax on that, bro. Yeah, or you're going to prison. Amazing, brilliant. Right, thank you, Noemi. Right, Hannah, well, let's fly over to Team Queen Mary. Hannah, so would you rather, and why, get my house or my kids in my will?
So I have a very short answer for this because it's ridiculous. It would clearly be your house because I painted some of it, so it was only fair.
Yes.
And
I proudly painted over all of your work.
and if you left me with your kids, they would just become mega sporty, and I don't want to trash your memory.
I wouldn't mind my kids being mega sporty. There's loads of money in that. I mean, not netball because there's no money in it. My kids are only allowed to play football, basketball. What else is the money in? That's it, I think.
Yeah.
Baseball, maybe. They put on some weight. I don't know. Thank you. Good. Right. So Hannah, next time you come and see my children, I will tell them. I'll point in the house and I'll go, she loves this more than you.
Yeah.
More than you do. You better bring my house a present next time you come round. That's all I'm saying. Round of applause for Hannah Thompson, please. That was darker than I thought it would be. Let's hope Elisa can dig us out of this misery hole. Elisa, so would you rather be able to read all men's minds or just have a free glass of wine?
Yeah, so actually, I don't love wine, so this was a really difficult decision to make. I with a nice glass of wine just because of how the question was phrased. So I looked at it very scientifically, and you said,
Course, yeah.
would you rather be able to read all men's minds? Now,
yes.
What would I get out of that? I mean, I already know what they're thinking, right? You know what all men are thinking. So I didn't think it would make a lot of sense to live my whole life being bombarded with that kind of background noise wherever I go. I mean, it's enough. It's bad enough if some dude is bold enough to give you those compliments. So I don't think I wanted any more of that. So, you know, I approached it with my scientific training, so pragmatism, complete lack of emotion, and I'd go with the glass of wine, because if nothing else, at least it will get me relaxed enough to be able to put up with what I already know is going on in all men's minds. Sorry, Steve.
No, of course. I mean, all men's minds, apart from Zoe's partner, who is thinking, why is the Hoover broken again?
I'm just going to say that this is the point that the smartest man in the world would jump in and say, well, actually, not all men.
My son is called Ben, so I printed him a T-shirt that says hashtag not all Ben. But it does match. His sister at the age of 9 months was walking around with a T-shirt that said hashtag kill all men on it, because she's the world's ultimate feminist.
Yeah.
People who are like killing men isn't feminist. It is though, isn't it? Right. We've got one more answer in this one. Have we? No, we've done them all. Done the kids, we've done the mind, we've done the money, we've done that. Yeah. Have any of you not answered? No, you've all answered. Amazing. Round of applause for all of our players. Let's find out what that final round did to all of their scores. And also, while we're there, we're going to get some life and comedy advice from Jones the Maths. Very much the only grown-up on your screen at the moment, Jones.
Well, my number one bit of advice before doing Zoom gigs is shut the door so the dog doesn't come in behind you, which has just happened behind me. But let's go to the scores, shall we? UCL coming in on 78 in the final score, but with a little note from me, because I was very impressed with Noemi's excellent and extremely accurate knowledge of Swansea rent prices.
Yeah,
Right.
my friend just moved there and I was very jealous.
But well, what's going on with Queen Mary? Well, it would turn out it's a draw.
Amazing. Is it actually a draw?
It is a draw.
I mean, I just pressed this at random.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that's absolutely wonderful thing. I would have a tiebreaker, but a draw is so special. I want to go and put that into the league table because it'll move you all above the likes of the museum that has some science in it, who've lost, but put you below all of the great winners. And it will encourage all of your teams to come back and play again because you're coming from a really good position. I should remind you all that our league table is extremely complicated. You get 3 points for a win, 2 points for a draw, 1 point for losing. And then the league table is organized by points per game multiplied by the square root of the number of games you've played, which I could possibly integrate into a different thing. But my maths isn't good enough and it would be too complicated for people to work out why. So there's a strong incentive there to play more games because you will move up the table. But there's also a strong incentive there to win some games, which is a lesson that I'm hoping that Ted and Kate from the Museum with Some Science in It have learned next week. Brilliant. So did anyone notice Sarah Jones's dog? I didn't. Oh, Zoe did. Zoe's got very advanced dog senses. Brilliant. Right. So teams, we've come to the end of our wonderful game today, and it's been absolutely wonderful to play with you all. You are great people. Just a reminder of a couple of things for all those of you tuning in. If you are watching this and thinking, actually, I'd be quite good at it, you can play. You just have to message me, and I'm easy to find. I've got like loads of websites and Twitter and Facebook, and go to scienceshowoff.org. And if there's two of you who have ever been in a room together, we'll come up with an organization name for you. And you can be a team. The second thing is buy tickets for next week's show of this. The third thing is buy tickets for Chaotic Adequate Live, which is on Eventbrite, and I really ought to put on the Chaotic Adequate website. So that'll be what I do before I go to bed. And the final thing is that so some of the people you can see in front of you, like Sarah and Hannah, have done this mentoring scheme I run called the Talent Factory, and it's coming back for a third cohort, and applications open tomorrow. And I'm just going to paste the website into the YouTube chat thread so that you can all, I just have to look it up, of course, because I'm a stupid person. And so if you're interested in communicating ideas, and when I say ideas, I don't mean like, well, are black people even people? I don't mean that sort of bullshit, fake debate nonsense. I mean actual ideas and research. Then you can get free training from me and free training from loads of other wonderful people, including Sarah and Hannah will mentor you. And I put the link in the YouTube thing. So if you think it would work for you or work for one of your friends, send it to them. It's a selective process, but it's not selected on how much of a gobshite prick you are. It's selected on how good you would be at working with and developing other people and being part of a lovely, fun thing together. Good. So go and do that. But finally, can I have a massive round of applause for all of our incredible players today and for the wonderful Jones the Maths.
Woohoo! Well done, everyone.
Have an absolutely brilliant week,
Okay.
everybody. I am going to kill this YouTube thread, go from this place and lead brilliant and successful lives. Good night. Where is stop streaming? Wait. I have to do it over here.